So in this video, we're going to reveal exactly how much retirement income you could expect from $2 million invested in a retirement account during your retirement. And the big problem here is that most people, $2 million sounds like a lot of money. $1 million sounds like a lot of money. That's been an old adage forever. But the problem is that most people do not have any kind of understanding what comes out of that $2 million that affects their net. You've been trained to look at the gross return instead of the net return. And what's even worse is that by the time most people realize how your retirement income is actually calculated, you'll be in your 50s or 60s, and it'll be way too late to fix it or to do anything about it. So let's dive in right now. How much income does $2 million provide in retirement? So let's first look at safe withdrawal rate. You've got $2 million times 4%, that's $80,000 a year. So right off the bat, again, as a reminder, you can't go spend $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000 and have a great time. There has to be some discipline so that you have enough to live on and you don't run out of money before you die. So 4% off of $2 million gives us $80,000. Great, let's look at the tax rate. So the tax rate is honestly very, very low. And I guess what I really need you to understand here is taxes are insanely historically low. And it's unlikely that they will be this low when you retire in 30 years. Think about how many presidents and how many laws we're going to have passed by then and whatever else could happen. Like, just understand that this is an absolute best case scenario for taxes. But let's just use today's rates for example. So 11.4% is the effective tax rate someone with $80,000 of retirement income is going to incur on that income. This assumes married filing jointly, 2025 tax brackets, big fat standard deduction, and then just a flat 4.4% tax rate. So the effective tax rate's really, really, really small. It's only 11.4%. So when you factor taxes out, you're just under $71,000. Now, let's do the inflation calculation because again, $71,000 30 years from now will not buy you as much as $71,000 today. So let's look at present value. You take your $71,000 and then over 30 years at a 3% inflation rate, the value in today's dollars of that future money would be $29,000. So we've gone from $2 million to $29,000 a year. Okay, so $29,000 a year is $2,433 a month. So a couple things to point out about this. $2,433 a month. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's way less money than you thought you'd be able to spend in retirement with $2 million invested. Now, if you're a glass half full person, you're saying, well, hey, I mean, yeah, maybe I'm not going to be living the high life, but that's still something. And I would say that's true. That is probably to some degree a survivable income, assuming everything goes perfectly and you don't have any crazy health issues or family issues or whatever. But if we're really more objective about it, nobody's going to be excited about being stuck living on $2,433 a month. There's no margin there. There's absolutely no margin. There's no room for your big aspirations or your big dreams either. You wanted to retire and take the trip and go play the golf course and do this with your family and leave money for your kids. That's all kind of out the window. This is a survival income. So by now you're saying, okay, well, how could this even be? It's $2 million. Like, I follow the math. And I would answer that with two things. 90s financial advice teaches you to focus on gross return instead of net. What we just did is we looked at net return after we took those things out. 90s financial advice quotes and talks about it's just gross return, $2 million. You're gonna have $2 million. That's so much money. How could that not be enough? And then secondly, and this is the most irritating part of this, is 90s financial advice does not at all focus on or account for or even seem to understand inflation. Inflation is when the government prints money, and when they do that, it devalues all the money that's in circulation already, and so you experience it as a loss of purchasing power, and 2 or 3% compounded over 30 or 40 years is a massive, massive headwind and a massive wealth drag, and nobody talks about that. So that is the difference between $2 million invested in a retirement account and then the reality of $2,433 a month. And truthfully, you're probably one of those people that has been investing in your retirement account faithfully and dutifully, and you've been disciplined and you've put that money away and you didn't spend it on other things, and you've envisioned that all this hard work and all this discipline someday is going to translate to a really great outcome for you in retirement. What's wrong is that you're following a plan that was meant for the 90s and worked for the 90s and is not going to work today. And right now I'm going to indulge you because you're asking, well, how much would I have to save to have, an income I could be excited about in retirement, one that does have margins and that would allow me to take care of my family and take the trip and go play golf or whatever it is you want to do? Great question. And I asked the same question too. So let's look at that. What amount of monthly savings would be needed for $100,000 of income in retirement? This is probably still less than some people would want, but it's probably more than most people would hope for. So let's just say $100,000. Maybe we can all get around that number. So this time we're going to look at rate of return, fees, and then the three we've already looked at: safe withdrawal rate, taxes, and inflation. Rate of return is really the return between now and retirement of the stock market. And then for fees, we're just going to assume you have a financial advisor, which is a 1% fee, and look at what that 1% fee does over 30 years. But so the next thing we're going to do is we're not going to start from zero. I bet that you've got money in a retirement account. I bet you're not sitting at zero. So we're going to look at what the Federal Reserve study says that the average 35 to 44-year-old has in a retirement account today. And because I'm being generous, we're not going to start at 44. We're going to start at 35 and give the study an extra 9 years to prove me wrong. I have to point this out first, though. There is a massive difference between median savings and average savings. It's almost $100,000 at the 35 to 44 age group. So if we did median, I just want you to know this whole thing is in the toilet before we even get started. But we're going to use average. And then again, like the numbers don't get better as we get older. Like you can see them right there. The median 35 to 44-year-old has $45,000. Yikes. The average is $141,520. If we're being generous, let's use that number. So we're going to say that the case study person that we're doing this for has around $141,520 in a retirement account, so we're not starting from zero. So first, let's back out of this and say if we want $100,000 of net, not gross, net income in retirement, what would we have to have before taxes so that after taxes we have our $100,000? And the answer is $124,000. So again, using today's historically low, probably not going to be around effective tax brackets, you're at about 19.6% with the 4.4 state tax thrown in there as well. So you need $124,400 so that you can have $100,000 after taxes. Great. Now let's do safe withdrawal rate. So $124,000 is 4% of what? It's 4% of 3.1 million. So if you were retiring right now today and you wanted $100,000 of net income, 3.1 million is what you would need in a retirement account. But now we've got to factor in how much do we need to save to still hit that 3.1? Because you don't have 3.1 today, right? You have the 141,520. So how much would we need to save to hit that number, assuming what we already have is factored in as well? So now we have to look at the real return that we're going to receive. So if, and this is a big if, and you can ask any financial advisor, but this is a big if. Let's just say the stock market was able to return 9.5%, which is the long-term compound annual growth rate, not average, but the compound annual growth rate over the long term. Most advisors today are running 7-8% scenarios, but let's just give it 9.5. We would have to take out 1% for an advisor fee and then 3% for inflation. So after those two adjustments, realistically, 5.5% is what we're going to run our numbers off of. So your starting balance of $141,520 at 5.5% over 30 years gets you to $705. So what you've already got saved gets you to a nominal value of $705 in the future. So now we're going to take that 3.1 million, subtract out the 705 that you've already got because it's already in your account. And so the number we need to hit and make up for is about 2.4 million. So then the question is, assuming a 5.5% rate of return between now and retirement over 30 years, how much money would you need to contribute monthly or annually to get to 2.4 million? So we pull out our compound interest calculator. You've got 2.4 million future value, 5.5% interest rate, 30 years to grow. Annual addition needs to be $31,472. So monthly, that's going to come out to $2,600. So if you want to have $100,000 of income in retirement and you already have $141,000 in your retirement account, you need to be contributing a little over $2,600 a month to hit that. If you're not contributing that or you're contributing less, you're not going to hit $100,000. And because I know you're wondering, and I was wondering this too, what is the nominal target of money I actually need to hit in retirement? Because you can't aim for 3.1 million in 30 years, because again, it's 3.1 million today. So what you need to aim for is $7.6 million. You need to have $7.6 million in a retirement account by the time you're 65 to have a shot with all these conservative, generous assumptions at $100,000 in retirement income. So how much are you putting away every month? And again, I'm sure you're doing the best you can. I'm sure you're doing the right thing. But I just want you to see this model's horrible. This is not a good model. And again, just as a reminder, we're using insanely favorable assumptions, okay? First and foremost, that you have uninterrupted growth in your retirement account, which means you never take the funds out for any reason, not for a down payment, not for a medical illness, not for an opportunity, not for a trip. Like, you leave that money in your retirement account forever for 30 years and don't touch it. And you make your contributions full and on time every single month, every single year, without ever missing a month or a year. If either of those things are not true, this is out the window. Secondly, we're assuming inflation, which was recently over 9%, stays at 3% or less, with a government that constantly creates inflation because they're constantly printing money, because we're $38 trillion in debt. Does that seem smart or logical to you? Third, we're assuming taxes stay historically low forever. If the government has a funding problem, do you think there's a chance that they will raise taxes everywhere to help them bridge the deficit? Fourth, we're assuming the stock market returns 9.5% annually every year, even though most financial advisors use 7 to 8% when they run their assumptions. And then lastly, we're assuming there's no mutual funds involved or any kind of other fees that we didn't account for. So what I want you to take away from this video is, if you are doing the right thing and putting money away in your retirement account, and that is your plan, retirement accounts are your plan for income and retirement, you're going to be vulnerable. You might have enough to survive on. It's highly unlikely you're going to have room and margin to do what you want to do. Retirement accounts are a scarcity trap. You might be able to survive. You're not going to thrive. This is absolutely not for the younger generations. This kind of sort of worked for the older generations before inflation became a huge problem. It's not going to work for younger generations. And so now you're saying, oh my gosh, you're so negative. This is such a downer. I'd rather you find this out now when you have time to do something about it, instead of in your 50s and 60s when you don't have time to do anything about it. And imagine how, if you're frustrated with me right now, imagine how mad you're going to be in your 50s and 60s when you go, oh my gosh, why did nobody tell me this? Go ask ChatGPT or AI what the average retirement savings is of a 65-year-old. Go look at how many of them are having to get jobs and how many of them actually have enough money to outlive them in retirement. So the good news is, if you're on the younger side, you still have time to do something about this. You got to throw 90s financial advice out the window. You got to stop doing this. You're going to have to change what you're doing. If this was helpful, if you disagree, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.